sudden, violent, unforgiving. In today's video, we examine some of the worst helicopter crashes ever caught on camera. March 5th, 2022, Eastern Ukraine. A Russian Mi-24/35 gunship helicopter was conducting a low-level attack mission over Ukrainian-controlled territory during the early weeks of Russia's invasion. The helicopter, often called the flying tank by Soviet pilots, was flying at ultra-low altitude, just above the tree line, attempting to avoid radar detection. Ukrainian forces on the ground were waiting. Footage captured by a Ukrainian drone shows the helicopter streaking across open fields when suddenly a missile trails upward from the ground. A man-portable air defense system, a MANPADS, fired by Ukrainian soldiers, strikes the helicopter directly in the engine exhaust area at the base of the main rotor. The aircraft immediately begins spinning violently. Within seconds, the Mi-24 slams into the ground and erupts in a massive fireball. All crew members aboard were killed. The video spread rapidly across social media, stark proof of how vulnerable even heavily armed gunships are to shoulder-fired missiles. It became one of hundreds of helicopter losses suffered by Russian forces in Ukraine. October 27, 2018, Leicester City's King Power Stadium. Leicester City had just finished a 1-1 draw with West Ham at home. As fans streamed out of the stadium, a familiar sight lifted off from the center of the pitch, the private helicopter of club owner Vichai Srivadhanaprabha. Vichai, the Thai billionaire who had transformed Leicester into Premier League champions just 2 years earlier, was heading home after the match, accompanied by 2 members of his staff and the pilot. The Leonardo AW169 helicopter cleared the roof of the stadium and began to turn. Then, without warning, it started spinning. A bearing in the tail rotor had failed, disconnecting the pilot's controls from the tail rotor blades. The aircraft spun violently to the right before plummeting into the stadium car park. It exploded on impact, a massive fireball lighting up the night sky. All 5 people on board were killed. 4 of them survived the initial crash with disabling injuries, but they couldn't escape before the fire consumed the wreckage. The tragedy sent shockwaves through the football world. October 7th, 2025, Highway 50 in Sacramento, California. Rush hour. A Reach Air Medical Services helicopter, an Airbus H-130, lifted off from UC Davis Medical Center on a routine repositioning flight. No patient was on board, just 3 crew members: pilot Chad Millward, flight nurse Susan Susie Smith, and paramedic Margaret D.D. Davis. Moments after takeoff, the helicopter lost power. Davis radioed a mayday. The helicopter began an emergency auto-rotation, descending rapidly toward the packed freeway below. Millward fought to control the descent, steering away from cars and toward a gap in traffic. The helicopter slammed into the center of the highway, flipping onto its side. Incredibly, it didn't hit a single vehicle. Bystanders rushed to the wreckage, lifting the helicopter with their bare hands to free one of the crew members trapped underneath. All 3 were critically injured. 4 days later, nurse Susie Smith, a 50-year veteran with 21 years in air medical services, died from her injuries. She was 67 years old. The crash was captured by multiple drivers, a stark reminder that even heroes aren't immune to tragedy. February 10th, 2010, São Paulo, Brazil. Morning rush hour. A Record TV news helicopter was covering traffic and police response to a bank robbery when the pilot reported an emergency over the radio. The Record helicopter, an AS-350, began spinning slowly to the left as it lost tail rotor control. Another news crew, filming from the Globo helicopter, captured everything. The pilot fought desperately to control the aircraft for over 5 minutes, attempting to steer away from the busy, marginal Pinheiros highway, packed with rush-hour traffic. The helicopter spun faster and faster, dropping vertically toward the ground. The pilot guided it toward the Jockey Club horse racing complex, a large open field away from populated areas. The aircraft slammed into the grass. The pilot was killed. The cameraman on board was seriously injured, but survived. The pilot was a hero because he was able to take the helicopter to a clear area, said Brazilian Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Beltran Crespo. January 29, 2025. Washington, D.C., 8:47 p.m. American Eagle Flight 5342, a regional jet carrying 64 people from Wichita, Kansas, was on final approach to Reagan National Airport. At the same moment, a U.S. Army UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter was conducting a routine night training flight along the Potomac River. The helicopter's flight path took it directly beneath the jet's approach corridor to runway 33. Air traffic control was understaffed. One controller was managing both airplane and helicopter traffic, a legal but unusual arrangement for that time of day. At 375 feet altitude, the passenger jet and helicopter collided in midair. Both aircraft exploded in a massive fireball and plunged into the freezing Potomac River. All 67 people aboard both aircraft were killed. 64 on the plane, 3 soldiers in the helicopter. It was the deadliest aviation disaster in the United States since 2001. Investigators later found that the helicopter may have been flying too high, above the 200-foot limit for helicopters near the airport. They also uncovered over 15,000 near-miss events between helicopters and planes at Reagan National Airport between 2021 and 2024. The FAA had the data. They never acted on it. March 11, 2018, evening over New York City. 5 passengers strapped themselves into a helicopter for what they thought would be the experience of a lifetime, a doors-off photography flight over Manhattan. The Airbus AS-350, operated by Liberty Helicopters, lifted off from New Jersey and began its tour along the city skyline. Passengers were encouraged to dangle their legs outside the open doors, snapping photos of the lights below. But as the helicopter flew over the East River, disaster struck. One of the passengers' safety tethers, meant to keep them from falling out, snagged on the helicopter's fuel shutoff lever. The engine died instantly. The pilot attempted an emergency auto-rotation to the river below, but the helicopter's emergency flotation system failed. The aircraft flipped upside down within seconds of hitting the water. The pilot, wearing only a seatbelt, managed to escape. But the 5 passengers, trapped in their complicated harness systems underwater, couldn't free themselves. All 5 drowned. The NTSB later determined that the crash was survivable, but the restraint system turned it into a death trap. The doors-off flight experience was immediately banned.